Hello, I'm John Ogilvy. I'm an IT architect working largely for the Government of Canada, although I do not speak for them in any capacity. And a case study today is the recent successful deployment of a protected B Microsoft 365 system for the Public Service Commission of Canada. Protected B is the government's default security framework, and that can be a real challenge in the cloud. So there are some technical tips here, but this is also about how to get it done with low drama and on schedule and on budget. Now, the Public Service Commission is 1,000 people. It's not one of the largest departments, but we were able to get them up and running with Microsoft 365 in about 6 calendar months. The first 3 of that was effort by the technical team and myself, and the last 3 of that is effort by the security team and the CIO, who has to sign the authority to operate, which is the license to go live. We brought in some external subject matter experts like SoftChoice and IBM and Avanade to help us do this at speed and do it, but still do it correctly. This is not rocket science. It's software as a service. The accomplishment is getting it done in a reasonable period of time. This is the timeline. The activities happened over the summer of 2020. The kickoff in April. When I say build, I really just mean configuration. We're not installing anything. It's software as a service. The IT security review is the formal assessment of the package of architecture and operations manuals and security controls that we presented. The ATO signature is the acceptance of the department that this system is essentially secure and can go live. A special note here about COVID. Now, all of this work was done during the COVID pandemic. The good news is that it had basically no effect on our schedule. The success factors for this deployment are not about technology, they're about teams and people. So we had aggressive leadership. These folks were coming from the private sector largely. We had a small focus team. PFC is a small department, and the team doing this was small, which turned out to be a great advantage, actually, in retrospect. We brought in external service providers to do the things they were best at, and to provide training. We focused on the core products, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. We didn't try to do everything at once. When we ran into obstacles, we looked for ways to avoid them. We had great support from SSC's Digital Communications and Collaboration Project team. Aggressive leadership really just keeps this thing driving forward in the face of obstacles. That doesn't mean that we skimped on detail. I remember spending one 5-hour session going through a couple of hundred security controls. But we had a clear idea of who was doing what, and we also trusted the experts that we had brought in to do their business. We learned from them, but we didn't really want to spend the time to climb the learning curve ourselves on this schedule. A small team would be composed of myself doing the architecture, a pen and all the documents, an IT specialist who was hands-on with the M365 dashboard and could configure it the way we wanted, a security analyst who was going to write up the security assessment and give advice to the CIO and has been watching our progress from the beginning, and a project manager who took this ATO and looked at it in terms of the whole rollout and training and licensing and change management piece. Everybody had a role to play. We stayed in our lanes. We were clear that other folks were welcome to observe management and so on, but we're also clear that they were there for their own education and not to contribute delay to the project. The external experts that we worked with really gave us momentum. We probably could have figured this stuff out ourselves. It's not a super complicated product, but it was great to have people with experience walking us through it and making sure that we did it right. The other advantage of service providers is that they are contractors like myself, would come in, get it done, and get going with no agenda. We were very focused on the core products that the PSC users needed. Primarily it was Teams, and enough SharePoint to support Teams, and enough OneDrive to support Teams. But we didn't deploy SharePoint in a global way that allowed people to use it for their intranet and their extranet and so on. That might be a future project. Right now it's about collaboration within this government department. As it happened, the shared services is responsible for the email of the majority of government departments, including PSC. So we didn't include Exchange in this rollout. That will happen on SSC's schedule. We didn't do Power BI because Power BI is a Microsoft product that they license as part of M365, but it's really another entirely different hairball, especially when you look at the back end, the data analytics workflows and data stores and data lakes. So we said, not today. And there are many, about 20 Microsoft secondary applications like Planner and Yammer and so on that we just gave a pass on because they weren't critical to the success of the users, and they were adding a lot of surface area from a security perspective. So I personally really insisted on removing complexities. The timeline was tight, so anything that got in the way of the timeline was given a really hard stare. We limited it to internal users. We bring in external users under strict conditions. We're using only government-furnished equipment, which are laptops that are provided by the department and linked to the VPN in order to do a login, but not for anything else. And we avoided doing cloud to ground, which is going from the cloud back into the government department's databases and so on. That's a hybrid architecture. It's extremely hairy, and it really wasn't necessary for our success. PSC was the first department to go through the DCCP process, as far as I know. SSC themselves and Treasury Board, who writes the rules for this, they went through, but we were the first off-the-street department. DCCP allowed us to have assistance in verifying the security guardrails. Again, something that now we can do for ourselves and I'm doing for other departments. But it was good to have SSC's assistance, Pierre Lopez, thank you. It's real simple. Video. Don't do video unless you have the bandwidth. So Protected B really is about default security posture of government systems. Government networks are Protected B. And that means that they can protect data that is moderately sensitive. If this data was disclosed, it would cause damage to the reputation of the government, financial damage to a company, and perhaps financial or reputational damage to an individual, but nothing terminal. So it's moderately secure. The guardrails published by Treasury Board to lock down an IT system to protect that kind of data were really clear and very helpful. So if you were in the necessity of doing a Protected B ATO in the cloud for Microsoft 365, here are some tips. First off, understand what parts SSC is going to be responsible for, because if they're delivering you email as a service, they also owe you an authority to operate. This is their problem, and they're offering the service to multiple departments. And they will secure it. Not your problem. You are responsible for the core Teams and SharePoint Online and OneDrive pieces. That's the ATO that I worked on personally. Microsoft applications with all Word and Excel and so on are not something you have to pay a lot of attention to because they've been around since the beginning of time, and they are subject to other approvals and authority to operate, which we can just inherit. So for the core products, the security guardrails that are published by Treasury Board and inspected by SSC are about 100 specific controls. And this is the easiest thing I've ever done because Treasury Board has deployed this product themselves and SSC has deployed this product themselves, and they've made notes about how they did it. So that's what we're following. It's not complicated. There are also 120 security controls. This is sometimes called a security requirements traceability matrix. And they also have to be met. So you're looking at a total of 220 specific checklist items that you've got to show evidence for. For about half of them at least, follow the instructions from Treasury Board and you're good. They're sensible instructions and they give you clear advice on how to follow them. You may, however, have to deploy additional security products because some of the controls require products that are beyond the basic E3 license the government departments have for Microsoft 365. Whether you deploy them or not is your choice. Your CIO and your security department are going to make the decision about whether this security feature coming at cost X and delivering a benefit Y is worth it this year. So this is the shopping list of some of the additional security products that we've had to look at and deploy. The first ones, PIM and PAM, and password protection and so on, are really features of Active Directory. So you're going to upgrade to Active Directory Premium 2, and those are taken care of. Sentinel is external Azure service for inspecting your access logs and spotting bad behavior. It's inexpensive and pay as you go, and it probably is a no-brainer. Advanced threat protection requires a bit of thought, but we discovered that the Plan 1 version that we got out of the box was adequate. Your needs might be different. Data loss prevention. From a government context, we're not dealing with people's credit card numbers in most cases. So this is talking about making sure that everything is labeled as protected B and that we don't export or exfiltrate protected B data from our system. I won't itemize the rest of them except for MCAS and OCAS. These are cloud access security brokers, CASBs, and they are critical if you want to be able to monitor what your users are doing in your Microsoft 365 tenant. It sounds complicated, but it's not really. It's important to realize that we're not going to deploy anything. Microsoft 365 is a software as a service. It's available for us. What we have to do is roll it out, which means lock it down, as I've just described, and then activate the licenses, which are bought for everyone in the government, and then onboard the users, which is probably the most complicated piece of the whole puzzle. But as an architect, I don't have to do it, so great. Key point is that Microsoft 365 deploys nothing into your departmental as your tenant. You don't need to have built and secured your cloud foundation with the firewalls and the VNets and so on. None of that is used. This is software as a service. Active Directory and mobile devices have to be sorted out, but M365 can go ahead without your cloud foundation being done, which is the way PSC did. And finally, my contribution to helping you do this is that I've taken the system architecture and the concept of operations document, which is the basic document describing the solution, and open sourced it. This is something I've worked on over a number of years. It's not specific to any department. And there are actually two of them. There's one for M365, and then there's one for the Cloud Foundation, which is the Active Directory pieces, and also it gives you some advice about how you might want to configure your foundation for future deployment of hosted applications, IaaS and PaaS. There are other documents that working architects are going to need around the guardrails and the controls, and I prefer to share them privately because they don't belong to me, and they're other more sensitive. So that's it, for this case study, and I hope it's been helpful.